Brought to you by Penguin.
Every Man. Written and read by me, Dr. Jackson Katz. Author's note. I wrote this book about men's violence against women, and not the many other forms of gender-based violence. I refer throughout to some of those other types of abuse, such as anti-LGBTQ violence or women's violence against men. They are all related to my subject, sometimes closely, but they are not my focus here. For the sake of brevity and practicality, I generally use the terms gender violence, gender-based violence, and GBV in place of the clunkier men's violence against women. I try to use gender-inclusive language whenever possible. That doesn't mean I use gender-neutral language, however. Men's violence against women is not a gender-neutral problem, so it doesn't make sense to talk about it in gender-neutral terms. One of the book's main themes is that all men have a role to play if we have any hope of significantly reducing the incidence of gender-based violence. This requires radical honesty and accountable language when we think, talk, and write about masculinities, misogyny, and violence, even if that language can sometimes be discomforting or provoke a defensive reaction along the lines of #NotAllMen. Also, many of my writing choices were dictated by the book's length. Gender-based violence is an expansive topic with far-reaching effects at all levels of society, culture, and politics. By contrast, from the beginning of this project, the idea was to produce a short, concise, energetic book that could nonetheless challenge conventional wisdom and catalyze positive change. Introduction. In 2021, Sarah Everard was abducted and murdered in London by a serving Metropolitan Police officer. This tragic event touched a cultural nerve, because the circumstances of her killing were not only horrific, but also archetypal. A single woman, walking alone early in the evening, killed by a violent stranger. She took many of the precautions that women are taught. She wore bright clothing, took a well-lit route, and was talking with her boyfriend on the phone. Her murder confirmed what so many women already knew. It's hard to feel safe anywhere. Many people of color understandably were upset that it took the murder of a white woman to attract the bright glare of the media spotlight. Where was the uproar when women of color went missing or when their bodies were found after they'd been murdered by a man? Still, women of all races and ethnicities took to the streets and social media to say, "I can't stop thinking about Sarah Everard," because they could all relate to her so directly. The feeling was widespread that it could have been me. Soon after, my email and social media accounts began to light up with inquiries from journalists and podcasters in the UK. They wanted answers to two basic questions. Why is men's violence against women such a persistent problem everywhere? And what can men do about it? They were asking me because these questions have been at the center of my work as an activist, educator, and scholar since I was a university student in the early 1980s. As subsequent protest rallies made abundantly clear, multitudes of women, especially young women, had reached a point of deep frustration and anger about the ineffective response of cultural and political leadership to the age-old problem of misogynist violence. And there was a growing call for actionable solutions. Around the same time that I was doing those media interviews, an exercise I had designed many years earlier, sexual assault in the daily routine, went viral for the third or fourth time on social media, receiving millions of views. The exercise involves drawing a line down the middle of a whiteboard and asking all the men in the room to list the things they do on a daily basis to avoid being sexually assaulted, usually nothing, on one side. Then, asking women the same question, and watching a long list cover up the entire other side of the board. Many women reported feeling seen and heard by this exercise, but it's worth noting that it was originally designed as a consciousness-raising experience for men. It was meant to help them see how terribly unfair it is that women's daily lives continue to be shaped by realistic fears of men's violence, and to catalyze a conversation about what men can do about it. The story of how this workshop exercise turned viral sensation was
Sample complete. Ready to continue?